Yeah, yeah. That's why we just gotta stay on that checklist and Kid can keep us straight. Did you ever get a chance to talk to Miss Allison about Mr. Metcalf? Yeah,
No, she was out on Friday.
yeah. And then she may wanna, I know she will, wanna buy, Commissioner D5.
Yeah. So much controversy.
Definitely one we don't know. I don't think we need all of that, especially all these meetings. We don't like all that.
Yeah.
It's after 8.
Oh my God.
You better get past that. You should be down here. It should be right here. Fill it up. Follow the lines.
How you doing there, sir? Right.
George? Like the next rezoning?
Exactly. Because there's a shortage of what we food across the United States. Not a lot of
I mean, I don't mind.
That's exactly what it, I don't know what else it could be.
It's okay.
Yes, sir.
Good morning, everyone. I'd like to hereby call to order the Escambia County Planning Board rezoning meeting for September 7th. We do have, looks like we're full board, missing one person, so we have a quorum. I'd like to recognize and welcome Mr. Kevin Adams. He's filling in for Ms. Hightower on the school board right now, so welcome, sir. We appreciate you being here. And with that, Walker's here, so we do have a full board. At this time, I'm going to ask everybody, please turn off any ringers on your phones so we don't interrupt the meeting, and please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Staff, do we have proof of publication of the hearing?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and does that meet all of the legal requirements?
Yes, sir.
All right, Chair will entertain a motion to waive the reading of the legal.
So moved.
Motion, do we have a second? Second, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. You've been previously provided the rezoning meeting minutes. Are there any additions, deletions, or corrections to those previous meeting minutes? If none, Chair will entertain a motion to accept as is. Motion, do we have a second?
Second.
All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. The rezoning hearing package for September 7th is previously, and the findings of facts has been previously provided to the board members. Chair will entertain a motion to accept that rezoning hearing package, the findings of facts, and the legal advertisements into evidence. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Motion, do we have a second?
Second.
Second, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Please note the rezoning hearing package with the findings of facts and the legal advertisements will be marked and included on the record for today's case. At this time, we'll ask our court reporter to please swear in the members of the board, members of the staff that are going to be testifying today.
You want to raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give in this case will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? And so you do affirm.
Yes, sir.
All right, thank you, sir. Board members, you've been previously provided the qualifications and education of these individuals to offer expert testimony in the area of land use and planning. Do any of you have any questions regarding their ability to offer this expert testimony? Hearing none, the chair will enter these staff members onto the record as experts in the area of land use and planning. At this hearing, the Planning Board is acting under its authority to hear and make recommendations to the Board of County Commissioners on rezoning applications. These hearings are quasi-judicial in nature. Quasi-judicial hearings are like evidentiary hearings in a court of law, however, it is less formal. All testimony will be given under oath, and anyone testifying before the Planning Board may be subject to cross-examination. All documents and exhibits that the Planning Board considers are entered into evidence and made part of the record. Opinion testimony will be limited to experts, and closing arguments will be limited to the evidence in the record. Before making a decision, the Planning Board will consider the relevant testimony, the exhibits entered into evidence, and the applicable laws. Each individual who wishes to address the Planning Board must complete a speaker request form and submit it to our staff members. They're located in the back of the chambers. You will not be allowed to speak unless we have received one of these completed forms. This is because you please note that only individuals who are here today and give testimony on the record will be allowed to speak at the subsequent hearing before the Board of County Commissioners. No new evidence can be presented to that Board of County Commission meeting. Therefore, all testimony and evidence must be presented today. The Planning Board will make a recommendation for the rezoning request to the Board of County Commissioners. They will then review the exhibits, consider the closing arguments, and make a final decision. All decisions by the BCC are final. Anyone who wishes to seek judicial review of that decision must do so in a court of competent jurisdiction within 30 days that the Board of County Commissioners either approves or rejects the recommended order of the Planning Board. All written or oral communications outside of this hearing with members of the Planning Board regarding any matters under consideration today are considered ex parte communications. Ex parte communications are presumed prejudicial under Florida law and must be disclosed as in Resolution BCC 96-13. As each case is heard, the chair will ask the board members if they have had any such ex parte communication to identify themselves and describe the communication. As required by Section 2-7.2 of the Escambia County Land Development Code, the Planning Board's recommendation to the Board of County Commissioners shall include consideration of the following approval conditions. You'll notice that they're up on the board at this point. The applicant has the burden of presenting competent, substantial evidence to the reviewing board establishing that the requested zoning district would contribute to or result in a logical and orderly development pattern. The appropriate surrounding area within the uses and conditions must be considered and may vary with those uses and conditions and is not necessarily the same area as required for the mailed notifications. A logical and orderly pattern shall require demonstration of the following of each of the conditions. Consistent with the comprehensive plan, the proposed rezoning is consistent with the future land use as prescribed in LDC Chapter 3 and with all other applicable goals, objectives, and policies of the comprehensive plan. If the rezoning is required to properly enact a proposed FLU amendment, it must be transmitted for state agency review. The proposed zoning is consistent with that proposed future land use and conditional to its adoption. Consistent with zoning district provisions, the proposed zoning is consistent with the purpose and intent and with any other zoning establishments provisions that are prescribed by the proposed district in the chapter. compatibility with surroundings, all of the permitted uses of the proposed zoning, not just those anticipated by the rezoning applicant, are compatible as defined in Chapter 6 with the surrounding uses. The uses of any surrounding undeveloped property shall be considered the permitted uses of the applicable district. Compatibility is not considered with potential conditional uses or with any other non-conforming or unapproved uses. Also, in establishing the compatibility of a residential use, there is no additional burden to demonstrate the compatibility of specific residents or activities that are currently protected under fair housing laws. Appropriative spot zoning, where the proposed zoning would establish or reinforce a condition of spot zoning as defined in Chapter 6, the isolated district would nevertheless be transitional in character between those adjoining districts, or the differences with those districts would be minor and sufficiently limited. The extent of these mitigating characteristics or conditions demonstrates an appropriate site-specific balance of interest between the isolated district and the adjoining lands. Appropriate with changed or changing conditions. If the land use or development conditions within areas surrounding the property of the rezoning have changed, the changes are to such a degree and character that it is in the public's interest to allow new uses, densities, or intensities throughout that area of the rezoning, and permitted uses of the proposed district are appropriate and not premature for the area or likely to contribute to sprawl. At the beginning of each case, as long as there is no objections from the applicant, we will allow the staff to briefly present location and zoning maps as well as photography of the property. Then we'll hear from the applicant and any witnesses that they may wish to call. Then we will hear from the staff and any witnesses they may wish to call. Finally, we will hear from any members of the public who have signed up to speak with a speaker request form. Today, we just have one case excuse me, on the docket. This is public hearing 6A, case Z2 2021-07. The applicant is Brent Snyder, PE, with Geosynthetic Consultants, agent for GL Restaurant Group, who is the owner. 6215 Swab Drive, plus minus 0.3 of an acre. From medium density residential district, 10 dwelling units an acre, to HDMU, which is high density mixed use. Before we go into the particulars of the case, members of the board, has there been any ex parte communication between you, applicant, agents, attorneys, witnesses, fellow planning board members, or anyone from the general public prior to this hearing? We'll also ask if you have visited the subject property and disclose if you are a relative or business associate to any of the parties. At this time, we'll start with Mr. Adams. Do you have any ex parte communication on this case, sir?
Yes, sir.
All right, thank you.
No to all.
All right, thank you.
No to all.
Chairman, no to all.
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 All right, thank you. Don't forget to turn your microphone on, Reed. Staff was a notice of the hearing presented to all interested parties.
Yes, sir.
Okay, and was it also properly posted on the subject parcel?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Mr. Snyder, do you have any objection to the staff presenting the maps and zoning areas and photography on the property?
No, sir.
Okay, he's indicated no at this time, so, okay, Allison, you'll be doing it?
Yes, sir.
All right, go ahead.
Good morning, Board. I'm Allison Lindsay, Development Services. So the rezoning request is from medium density residential to HDMU, high density mixed use. So here is the location map showing the location on Swab. And this is the future land use map showing the current mixed use urban. And here is the zoning map showing the current MDR zoning and the surrounding MDR and commercial zoning. Here's the existing land use of the site. This is in the airport height zone. And this is just the aerial photography of the site. This is the public hearing sign that was posted on site. This is looking west onto the subject property, and as you notice, that fence will be, I think, removed when they do their development. This is looking north along Swab. This is looking east across Swab Drive. This is looking south along Swab. And that's the maps and photography.
Okay. I'm sure we'll hear more about the fence and its current condition and everything like that. Okay. All right, thank you. Any questions on the maps or photography? Okay. All right, Mr. Snyder, if you'll come forward, please, sir. Sir, we'll ask you to be sworn in for the hearing, please.
Raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony about to give in this case
I do.
will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
All right, sir, if you'll please state your name and address for the record, please.
Brent Schneider with Geosyntec Consultants. Address is 317 West Marino Street, Pensacola, Florida 32501.
All right, thank you, sir. Did you receive a copy of the staff's rezoning hearing package and the findings of facts?
I did.
Okay. And do you understand that you have the burden of providing substantial competent evidence that this proposed rezoning is consistent with the comprehensive plan, furthers the goals, objectives, and policies of that plan, and is not in conflict with the Land Development Code?
I do.
Thank you, sir. Please proceed.
Sorry, quick administrative question. Do I need to fill this form out?
You're the applicant, so we like to have a record of it, but that's fine. You'll be speaking on the record. You can give it to the staff members there.
Okay.
So.
Mr. Chairman and board members, we first of all wanted to thank you all for your time, for the opportunity to be here and present this case. I'm honored to represent the Lotzi family and their business endeavor, and again, just wanted to thank you for the chance to present this. Hope you've all had a chance to read the application and the documentation that was provided. This lot is essentially part of a residential peninsula in an ocean of commercially zoned lots, as you could see from the figure that was presented earlier. This is an area that is heavily commercial, including the restaurant located at 6205 North 9th Avenue and the adjoining lot at 6209 Schwab Drive, which both lots are owned by the Lotzi family. Rather than requesting rezoning to commercial, which would have been justifiable in my opinion, they are requesting high-density mixed use. That is a less intensive use, and I believe would create a transitional zoning from low to high as the closer you get to North 9th Avenue in terms of intensity. That sector of North 9th Avenue is one of the busiest segments of traffic in terms of traffic loading in the county, in all of Escambia County. And it is a high density, high commercial use sector. So I think this transitional zoning would provide for a logical, a buffer from commercial to residential. So again, instead of going commercial, requesting commercial, which would have been justifiable, the ask here is to request conversion from existing residential to HDMU. In terms of their plans for development, the proposed parking lot would not adversely impact the surrounding existing uses. In fact, there'd be improvements that would be made, including landscaping, buffering, screening, and in terms of safety, that's a big concern too, is getting cars off the road into this parking lot, also affording pedestrian safety. Their plans are to include walkways, signage, all the requirements to meet the Land Development Code in terms of their development. Other existing surrounding land uses include a tire shop, mechanic, animal clinic, other restaurants, other retail services. So the proposed use as a parking lot would be consistent with those other uses. I'd like to open it up for any questions that the staff may have or the board members at this time.
Okay, do you agree with the staff's findings on the case, or do you have alternate findings that you'd like to offer in any of the criteria?
Right. I don't agree entirely with the finding that it does not meet location criteria. In the LDC, there is an option to present a compatibility analysis, and that's exactly what we did as part of the rezoning application. And I'll reference that section here. Section 3-2.95, documented compatibility. And so what was presented was all of the reasons we feel like the parking lot would be compatible, not only in terms of its intended use, but also the rezoning from residential to commercial, to HDMU. It's compatible with the commercial uses.
Okay. All right. Did you have a question, Tim?
Is it fair to say that, I mean, we're talking parking most likely for George's, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so there's a absolutely fantastic brunch they have there, and if you haven't been there on Sunday and been in the traffic, it's a challenge. It truly is. And we are not supposed to look at what the proposed use is, but what the potential use is according to the zoning. So I appreciate the effort to mitigate or make a buffer in zoning. The location criteria is frequently a challenge. They go on what it is, and we're also trying to assume what it could be. So anyway, I just want to make sure that is, I know the problem. I know it too well. I think I've been a part of it. I've parked down the street, and I'm sure the neighbors aren't really fond of it when we all park there. But I just wanted it to go on record. I think that is the fact of the matter is they need parking pretty badly there, and that's what you're attempting to solve that problem, if that it is correct.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
I just want to add that I totally agree with Tim on that. Fellow board member, the brunch is excellent. It's not the only great meal they have, but I will say that the parking in that area is atrocious. And anything you could do to alleviate it, I think, would help.
Okay. Did you have something, Eric?
You mentioned there was a conscious decision to apply for this and not commercial. In the application process, can I ask staff, was there a conversation with you and was there a professional consultation to request commercial?
Horace, please state your name and position.
Yes, sir. Horace Jones, Director of Development Service Department. I did not speak to Brent on this particular, on the zoning category that was chosen. I don't know if another staff member did, but I know that I did not speak to him on this particular issue. And I'm not gonna make no other comments at this time, but I will later on. Again, Mr. Powell, you hit it on the head. This is just not about the restaurant. It's not, and we gotta keep that issue at the forefront. It's about the other uses. It's about the facts. It's about the locational criteria. It's just not about that. Everyone could agree, I think, that excellent. But we cannot go with our bellies at this time. We gotta go with the facts of the case.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Could you spell the family name for me?
L-A-Z-I.
Thank you.
May I respond to that?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
We did meet with staff, sir. That was one of the preliminary steps. We came in and we discussed what was envisioned, what their intended uses were for that lot. They purchased the lot a year. How long ago was it? 18 months? 2 years? About 2 years ago. and it was a florist shop, so it had a commercial use. And so they purchased the lot knowing that they had, and I know the direction was to try to stay away from the development, but it's all interrelated, but they purchased the lot with the intent to correct the parking issue. The restaurant exceeded everyone's expectations, how well it's done, and it's been a spark plug for that area. And parking, we all know, has been an issue. So that was sort of a desperate measure to correct the problem and to fix it. So the Lotzies thought that they could use that for parking. We're not going to get into code enforcement stuff, but anyways, long story short, they were made aware that they could not use it for parking. That's when they reached out to me to ask for help, to correct this issue and to go down the path of compliance and to do everything like they should. So that's how we got to where we are today. We met with staff very early on and said, hey, this is what we'd like to do. The thought was internally, and as we discussed, the next steps was that commercial would be maybe too much of a big ask to convert from the existing residential to commercial. So we did make a conscious effort, the Lotzies made a conscious effort to request HDMU, knowing that they're not intending to use it for some of those higher intensive commercial uses that would be allowed. So that's the path we started going down. Then we met with Development Services for the pre-app and received those development-specific questions from the LDC and came here for the next step. And then the next step, as we all know, would be, if this is approved, to go to the board and then seek a development order for the parking lot.
Mr. Snyder, I know you probably haven't seen, but Drew has come forward. He may be the person you spoke with. Drew, were you sworn in when we did it at the beginning?
No.
Okay, if you'll please be sworn in.
Sounds swear testimony about to give, in this case, be the truth, all truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do. It's Drew Holmer, Escambia County Development Services. I did meet with Mr. Schneider and his clients, discussing all their options, and given that there is residential in the area, I did bring up the option of making the smallest step up as opposed to jumping all the way to commercial, just for a matter of compatibility.
Okay, thank you, sir. Okay. Mr. Schneider, did you want to call any witnesses at this time, or we usually will go into the staff presentation. We give you an opportunity to come back and kind of wrap it all up, unless there's board questions at this time.
I know that my client would like to speak. They could do that either now or after.
You have the opportunity to either bring them up as witnesses where you kind of ask them questions and have them respond, or they can speak during the public comment portion. So it's your choice. They can do both, actually.
Okay.
So it's your choice how you'd like to handle that.
Do it public.
Public
please.
speaking. Okay, that'll be fine. We'll recognize them during that portion. Okay, Allison, if you'll go ahead and give the staff's findings, please.
Okay, so on criteria 1, consistent with the comprehensive plan, the proposed amendment to HDMU is consistent with the intent and purpose of the category mixed-use urban, because it does allow for a mix of residential and non-residential uses. Consistent, criteria B, consistent with the zoning provisions. The proposed amendment is not consistent with the intent and purpose of the Land Development Code. Schwab is a local residential street and does not meet the locational criteria as stated in 3-2.9, although the applicant stated that HDMU is a less intense, and we do agree. It still must meet the locational criteria. And it is on a local road, which is not part of the locational criteria. And there's also a report from the TTO department that's also in your rezoning packet, which they had no major issues. Criteria C, compatible with surrounding uses. The proposed amendment is not compatible with the surrounding uses. Along Schwab, There were zonings that were medium-density residential and commercial. The parcels to the northwest along Schwab are currently residential, with the lower end of Schwab that's closest to 9th Avenue, that is commercial in both zoning and the uses. The parcel is located on the residential portion of the block. Criteria D, appropriative spot zoning. Of course, by definition, and the rezoning request to HDMU would be considered spot zoning due to the surrounding parcels being MDR and commercial. But then again, however, the HDMU was less intense, and it was very conscious of the applicant to agree to go to HDMU. Appropriate with changed or changed conditions. There hasn't been any major changes other than the restaurant, being there, but the primary intent of the request HDMU district is to change from medium density residential so that the parcel can be developed to accommodate employee parking or parking. So that's the end of the staff findings.
Allison, would you say in this case that there are changing conditions because of the existing use of the property there? I mean, is that what we're saying, that this district is in transition?
Say that again?
Do you feel professionally that this area is in transition, and I guess that would be just cut it off there. Is it in transition?
Well, maybe not along the 9th Avenue side, but the further you go down Schwab, which is a residential, you don't want it to, okay, here's a HDMU or here's a commercial, you don't want it to continue down that residential local road.
Okay. And the applicant indicated that they had submitted, I guess, a report indicating why they felt like it was consistent and compatible and not spot zoning. Were all of those issues addressed in the applicant's submittal?
Well, to the best that they could, although the code strictly, here again, I'm going by the locational criteria. If it were on an arterial or if it was on the corner of a recorded subdivision, it would definitely, it would make a difference. But it's a local road, and, the board has the option of, seeing the gray instead of the black and white. So I just had to go with the code saying it's a local road.
Okay. All right. That's all my questions. Board members' questions of staff? Tim?
I just, one question of staff, was there a prior occupant of that, was it well known that that was a non-conforming use that was being utilized there at the time?
Yes, sir. This is very, very briefly, because these questions that you're asking, respectfully and very, very briefly, because we want to make sure that all of the facts get out, because these questions could be asked by the BCC. This has been a long issue, as Mr. Brent Schneider and the applicant, they have been very, very willing to try to correct some actions that that shouldn't have been done, some actions that should not have been done. It never was approved for a parking lot. It was used for a parking lot, but never went through the proper process. It has been a long, outstanding issue with it. It's been a long history, and Brent is involved, but the case has a history. There were several, I'm trying to be gentle, there were several complaints alleged. That's what brought this issue before the code enforcement a couple of years ago. But the pandemic hit. So therefore, it could not bring it to this point because of the pandemic. Again, the parking lot, it never should have been there. The zoning did not allow for it. Some actions were taken on their own accord. That's why code enforcement got involved. They did have the special magistrate hearing this year because of the pandemic, again, because of the pandemic. That's why there was a question raised about that fence, because They have to make sure that it is not being used as a parking lot until, if it receives all of the approvals. That's why the fence is there to sort of, because the parking lot can be used for the customers as well as their citizens. And that is what was happening to that area, to that parking lot. That's why the neighbors start complaining. That's why, but again, the pandemic hit and they could not, everything was sort of, I don't want to say put off because of the pandemic, but this is why we're here today. So again, it never should have been there. It's not grandfathered in. It's not grandfathered in at all. It was some actions that was taken were not in accordance with the Land Development Code at that time, but the pandemic did hit.
Thank you, Horace. Board members, additional questions?
Mr. Chair?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I had a question because leading into residential, that asphalt strip there, is it primarily on the right of way that they're parking on right in front of the fence?
I think that is part of the right of way.
Okay, what I was curious is, will there be a sidewalk put there in place of the asphalt?
They, all of those, they did, and Brett, maybe you, they did have a pre-application, and our access management did look at it. If those things are required, they're gonna have to do it if they get rezoning approval.
Okay.
That's if they get it.
Okay, because I'd hate to see employees walking down the road with all the traffic.
And Horace, I'm sorry, Brent, hold on just a second. If the rezoning is recommended and the Board of County Commissioners goes with it, the property would still have to go through the DRC process, and all of these things would
Yes,
be
sir.
considered at that
Fully,
time?
it would have to go fully. If there's some things that are there that's not right, it will have to be tore up and everything will have to be redid completely, because stormwater, all of those things will have to be redid, because none of it, they only had a pre-application meeting. So everything will have to be redid, looked at, and hopefully, and if they want to do it, if the board blesses it, if it's not right, they have to make it right, which I believe that they intended to do that.
Okay, Mr. Schneider, go ahead, sir.
Can we pull up the zoning map, please? You don't have our exhibit, though, this one right here?
All right, let's get on the record what we're looking at here. What page of the package is this, and what is the exhibit we're looking at?
That's correct.
This is page 28 of 56 in our packet, and this is the applicant's submission of the zoning map.
Okay, so this is something that you personally
Yes, sir.
created and submitted? Okay. If you'll tell us, because we're doing verbatim on the record here, explain to us what you've created here and what the map is.
Okay, so starting off with the restaurant, it's at 6205 North 9th Avenue. So to the right-hand side, off of 9th Avenue. And then across the street in green is 6209 Schwab Drive. That used to be a martial arts training facility. The Latsies have purchased that parcel recently. And then the parcel in question is 6215 Schwab Drive, directly next to it. The reason I'm bringing this up was because the question came up about pedestrian safety. And at the time when we first met with Horace and his staff, the Latsies did not own this additional parcel, this 6209 Schwab Drive. So there was a little bit of a challenge, not to say it couldn't be done, but a little bit of a challenge as to how pedestrians can safely walk from this off-site parking lot to the restaurant. Well, now that they've acquired 6209 Schwab Drive, the layout will be that much easier. They'll be able to utilize that parcel. Pedestrians can leave the proposed commercial lot, walk across this, and then have more of a direct crossing at that location to the restaurant property. Also, there was a comment, going back to staff findings, there was the comment that this is in the residential block. And although I don't disagree, but you can see across the street, those are townhouses, high density, and those are zoned commercial. And then on the other sides, so to the west is additional residential that's also zoned commercial.
Can I ask a question real quick?
Yes,
So
sir.
what you're pointing out is even though there is residential in the commercial, it is still zoned commercial, so those could be knocked down tomorrow and created to anything that is in the commercial zoning.
Yes, sir. And that's not what we're proposing. We're proposing, as we've said over and over, less intensive use.
So it's not it's not the use, it's the zoning that you're concerned about. And since it is all commercial zoning, then there's the spot zoning or the transition is a correct statement in your opinion. Is that
Yes, sir.
correct? Okay.
Any additional questions? All right, you heard me ask Allison about addressing each of the criteria, and I know during your presentation you spoke to consistency with the local street and the locational criteria. Did you want to add anything for the other criteria as well? The reason I say that is if a board member decides that they want to make a recommendation to approve, they would need to have alternate findings of fact. And it's very helpful if you kind of have those alternate findings that they can rely on. So just giving you the opportunity to add those in.
Maybe a question we could start off with from Ms. Allison is the requirement for compatibility analysis, is that not due to not meeting the intent of the location criteria?
Yes, sir. If it doesn't meet the, where it says all must, any or all, it has to meet those, and it is your burden to present that compatibility. And then I believe it's the ultimate decision of the board to take your compatibility and accept those from my findings.
And so you had no comment onto the quality or the content of the compatibility analysis? You're just documenting that it was submitted and that the location criteria is still, however, not met?
Yes, sir. And also, yes, sir.
Okay.
I think in a case like this, and we've seen this in the past, the staff members have black and white regulations that they have to follow, and that's what they put in the findings, whereas the board has the ability to kind of go into that gray area. If we see that we think it's compatible, then we can do that based on the information you submitted.
And Mr. Chairman, I will say that, as far as the surrounding uses and his mentioning that the zoning around it was commercial, for criteria C, it says the proposed amendment is or is not compatible with surrounding existing uses. It doesn't say zoning, it just says uses.
Right.
So it's kind of a catch-22 sort of.
Yep. Okay. And that's fine. I just wanted to give you an opportunity if you wanted to add anything to that. So do you have any other witnesses that you wish to call before we go into public comment?
We'll go to public comment, please.
Okay. You'll have an opportunity to come back up and finish up, so. Okay. Mr. Leslie, if you'll please be sworn in and state your name and address for the record, sir.
Raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony about to give in this case will be the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do. My name is George Lazzi, and good afternoon, everybody. thank you for having us here and give us an opportunity to share our story and share our plan. And thank you for all being so understandable and working with us. This is very new for all of us, especially for me and my wife, that I'm a chef. I don't know any of this, but we are learning every day something new. So, as I mentioned, my name is George Lazzi. I'm chef and owner of the restaurant George Bistro and Bar that we started a company about 6 years ago, I'm sorry. And we started with downtown location on Garden E. And we went in the building something that was built way before, maybe some of us are born. So we had a great support from our community, and we literally started with the company to grow from inside out. So we came out after a few years being in the location. There was time to relocate. I know it's a long story, but it is the reason that we are here because of that story. Otherwise, I don't need that property if I don't have this story. So that's why I want to tell it and share with everybody. So we relocated on the 9th Avenue, which one we thought at the time that it was a great opportunity. I still believe it is a great opportunity because I think that that location just blew and made the area completely different than it was before. And we went in the building, somebody built it 2 decades ago. And whoever designed it approved all this stuff that we're talking about now. It was discussed, I'm sure, at the point. So I'm sure the Schwab Drive was exactly where it is right now, and all the traffic and everything was exactly how it was. But we didn't realize that we will have such success that we will have an overflow problem of that restaurant. And so when we start looking and searching, we realize that we have very limited options where we can park all these cars for employees, number one, because at this moment we are employing 110 employees. So we cannot deny the fact that we are providing jobs in that location. So when we looked around in the neighborhood, this was old flower shop that I'm assuming it was operating as it's a flower shop is a business, right? So it means it was some sort of commercial use, right? So, and had a parking spaces in front of it, and it was for sale, and we approached the owners, and we were able to close the deal. Now, due to the lack of my personal knowledge of all this and rezonings and plans and rules, that was just a honest approach to it that, okay, let's think like everybody will think. Let's buy the property, tear it down, and park the cars on it. Not realizing, what will be the steps needs to be taken. And obviously, we learned from that that's not how it works. We need to really follow the steps by step. So here we are now that the problem that we have is that basically the parking issue. As we already mentioned, and we are trying to find a solution here. We're not trying to do anything different. I'm not opening the second restaurant across the street. I'm not doing anything else. I want to try the solution for the neighborhood, that we believe that, we are bringing in this neighborhood and community something very special. And we are trying to do everything is in our power to be as cooperative and follow the rules. But also we want support as well, because if that doesn't happen, then we are jeopardizing the business, we're jeopardizing the outcome of it, and we're jeopardizing also the lot of employees' future in our company. And we believe that that's how the towns and get built from inside. That you support the small ones and they grow. That's what I believe. That's why I work every day so hard to support all this. And I believe that we have put our mark in this community, that we have shown that we try our best to do everything that we can do in our power to follow the rules, follow the guidelines, and here we are. This is the solution that we're thinking that it can be very reasonable, in my opinion, obviously, that that we can convert to the low density, mixed usage that can be provided. And I think we have an amazing plan. I don't think we have seen the actual, what will be the actual plan of the parking space, how it goes in and out, so it's safe. And we mentioned about the crossing the road. And since now we have a property right next to it that can be also utilized as a joint that we can do more things in terms of safety, gives us that opportunity. And since we did not tear down somebody's house, we actually torn down the existing business. That's why we felt that this was a very appropriate approach to what we can do. Plus, as we mentioned, that this is all surrounded with the commercial. So we own our restaurant, the land and the property on it. But also I'm concerned maybe somebody's buy the whole block behind me and they're gonna build I don't know, something different. So there's always something can happen, but we just, going by day and just trying to make it and to follow the, all the regulations and rules. So this is our story. Obviously, we appreciate all of your time and support, and hopefully we will find the right area that we're all comfortable with it. But as I said, we are all about to follow the rules, to have a safety in place and not to cause anything to the neighborhood. And I believe that we created actually the value to the neighborhood, and we added the value to the neighborhood. And there's a lot of great supporters around us. And we just felt that we didn't need to invite anybody today to have a whole army of people coming here, because that's not about that. It's about to be a fact. And, so this is my story. If you have anybody has any questions, please, but I just wanted to share a little bit of what a hard-working company we are, and 110 people are depending on this, situation to carry on. So thank you all. Any questions?
Thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
Any questions for Mr. Lozzi? Okay, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Mrs. Lozzi?
I think he covered it all.
Okay. Now, I will tell you, if you don't speak on the record here, you won't have the opportunity to speak at the Board of County Commissioners. So yeah. I figured you wanted to at least get something on the record.
Like he said, this is all very, very new to us and a very interesting process. And
Ma'am, hold on just a moment.
Sorry.
That's okay.
I'm so sorry.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give in this case will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I
State
swear.
your name.
Luba Lazi,
Spell it, Luba.
L-U-B-A.
Easy, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you for hearing us. He covered all of it, and I think all I have to say is that we want to be good neighbors to all the neighborhood that's around us, and we're just trying to come up with a solution to a problem that we all know exists. And if that's our biggest problem, that the parking, I think we're doing pretty good here. So please help us to come with the right solution and the right planning. And like George said, we just want to make sure that everything is done correctly. Thank you for hearing me. Thank you.
I just was gonna ask, did you all pay to put that fence up? Was
What is
that, did you have to employ?
paid, yes.
You had to pay to
Yeah,
have that fence put
yeah,
up?
yes.
I'm assuming that was as a result of some code enforcement issues.
Right. So I
and-
put the orange cones, but code enforcement came out, said that it's not good enough because the customers can move the orange cones and park there. So the solution was to get a permit and put a fence up.
I bring that up because I know that fencing is not cheap, and that was not a cheap fence. And I just, for my fellow board members, that I imagine you went to that great of length to appease not only the code enforcement, but to try to be a good neighbor, more importantly. And in these cases, so many times it seems as though doing the right thing you get punished for, and it's not the case. It is them following the rules. I mean, and I think if you just are persistent and persevere through it, maybe it will, hopefully it will all work out for everybody. But, and also frequently where you did not want a bunch of folks here speaking on your behalf, we also listen if there are neighbors who were the ones that called in code problems, that they would be here to say, we don't want that parking lot. And we listen to that, but we'll see if there are any of that
And
are
I
on that side.
understand where they could be coming from, because it did become busier than we expected, right? So, and people do park in somebody's property where they're not supposed to. But, I can't control it. I feel like I can control and try to come up with solutions that we can't do. And that's what we are trying to do here. there's gonna be about 22, 25 parking spots created, and is it gonna completely solve the parking? Hopefully, but we'll keep going. So, thank you for hearing me.
I have a question.
Sure.
When you purchased 6217, was the flower shop in operation at the time of purchase?
So it was 6215,
Or
it was
62
not.
It was not?
It was
Okay.
not.
And when you purchased 6209, was the martial arts studio in operation?
I'm not sure. I think so. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it was for sale for about over a year, and then finally, when everything starts happening, it was kind of like the right decision. Of the rates were, a little lower, so it just made sense for us to go ahead and try to purchase that to
So-
again solve the hopefully.
And I'm making an assumption here that both of those addresses were used as businesses, a flower shop and a martial arts studio. Were they converted homes from bygone years? Did they look like houses?
Schwab Drive had a big, it was an office and a flower shop where were all the flowers and refrigerators and walk-in closets, not walk-in, walk-in refrigerators and greenhouses in the back. That's the property we purchased. And the 6209 Schwab Drive, there's a small house, but then there's a huge, like almost warehouse building attached to it.
Okay.
Yeah.
With a large sign, if I recall, very large sign. Still remember that.
Yes.
Mhm.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Awesome.
Board members, any additional questions of this speaker? Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Ms. Karen Dias, I know you marked on here that you did not wish to speak. However, if you don't speak here, you can't speak in front of the commissioners, so. All right, if you'll be sworn in and state your name and address for the record, please.
Raise your right hand, do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony about to give in this case will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you?
I do. Hi, thank you for hearing me. My name is Karen Dice. I am very good friends with George and Lou Belazzi. I am from Pensacola, so I'm very familiar with that area. I went to Workman High School, so that area, their flower shop was not in use. It was dilapidated. It was run down. The karate area, or the whatever he did, has never been it's been an eyesore all along. The street, when you drive down Schwab Drive, excuse me, I'm so nervous.
That's okay.
When you drive down Schwab Drive, I was down that way the other day, there's old furniture and old couches always thrown out by the side of the road. I don't understand why the county can't keep that all straight. I think a car parking area would be better than old furniture. And I just came to speak on George and Lou's behalf. So
Okay.
I'm really nervous talking in front of you.
All right.
Spell your last name for me?
DYESS.
Thank
So
you.
I've seen them grow. I saw them downtown. I saw what they went through. When they moved to this building, I remember George saying, "Oh, we're moving to 9th Avenue and there's 42 parking spots," because there was nothing where they were downtown. It used to be the old bread company. So I'm here in their support. I wanted to speak, but I wanted to make sure what I said was right.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Any
ma'am.
questions?
Let me add something, Mr. How you said something. I want to
Horace.
rectify.
Say who you are.
Horace Jones, Director. I always like for the record to be clear because they get quasi-judicial, and if anything happen, the record has to be clear. As far as the fence, the special magistrate made them do that. It wasn't code enforcement, it was a special magistrate due to the fact, I want to say this again, they had to, because of non-compliance, of not going through the proper review. If they would have went through the proper review ahead of time, maybe that's wouldn't have been necessary. But because they did not, the special magistrate decision was that, yes, you got to do it because it was not properly permitted and it has not been through the process. So that's why I want to be. It wasn't, it was an order. So I want to be clear for the record.
Can somebody, I'm sorry, may I speak?
Yeah, go ahead.
Can somebody point to the specific piece of property looking at that line?
Where the red car is.
Just point to it. Let's see what's there. That's the property that they want to turn into, or turn into a parking lot.
The building has been removed at this
Right,
point.
correct. That's right. I just think it's relevant to see what was there before.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I'm very familiar with this drive, and for all intents and purposes, it's, to me, commercial businesses that have been along that drive, you know, so I mean, it's not like it's something new. Yes, sir, John?
Yeah, John Fisher. I was there at the pre-application meeting with them, and some of the modifications in order, if this was to move forward when they go through the DRC process, would to be construct sidewalks and a crossing path to make it safer there. So just, you know, we've already looked, staff has looked at this. If, you know, if they were able to move forward, they would make this a much safer route for people to cross and go up and down the side.
Very good.
I've got a
Okay.
question for staff.
Yes, sir.
With the knowledge that they bought the property to the south that is also commercial, does that change the possibility if they combine the properties into one? Does anything of that nature, knowing that that property has now been purchased by the Lazzis?
Of course, it can make it better, but again, with the location criteria, the local road is still an issue because, and I'm trying to be very gentle, every lot is not meant for every business. That's why you got some of these extra layers to protect, because you know how bad our zoning is. But there are some circumstances where the area could be the best fit, but every lot is still not zoned for every type of business, and that could make it better because they are putting forth an effort to try to provide some corrective actions.
Thank you, Horace.
But somebody can come in and buy all those townhouses across the street at one time, knock them all down, put a commercial building there, no problem. There's no.
That's not as factual. If just because
Maybe not feasible, but it's possible because it is commercial zoned.
That
They would
is-
have to meet all the DRC requirements.
All of the zoning is only one part. There are some other things where it could be a no.
Okay.
I just want to say that. Zoning is one part, but other criteria could yet make it a
But for
no,
zoning purposes.
like the location criteria.
Zoning purposes, that could happen, not DRC. You're just talking about our realm here is zoning.
Yes, the
Okay.
zoning does allow for commercial uses, but again, that's only one part.
Okay. Additional questions? Okay, is there anyone else from the public who has not spoken yet that wishes to speak on this matter? All right, hearing none, I will hereby close the public comment portion of the meeting. Mr. Schneider, if you'll come back forward, please, sir. Give you an opportunity to kind of wrap everything up, make any final comments that you may have.
I think Mr. Lotzi summed it up best, was that we're here to work with the county, work with the planning board. I know Horace made the record straight, and that's fine, but we don't want to keep going back to the past and discussing code violation, because that's been settled. That was the reason for the fencing. And I think we can all agree we want compliance. We want to do the right thing. So we're looking for support at the end of the day to solve a problem. And we feel like this is the best solution on the table. Again, we could have asked for commercial, but we felt like that would be a hard ask. And so we went with HDMU. And I think at the end of the day, that's what's best for the community. It improves safety, it improves patrons, employees. It reduces the traffic issue, getting vehicles off the roads and into that parking lot. So this is a solution that I think is a win-win for everybody, and just want you all to consider that. And I feel like we've made a strong case in the compatibility analysis and the documentation that was provided, the figures included. I just want to leave it at that. These are hardworking people that want to do the right thing at the end of the day. And that's why they hired me. That's why I'm here, standing up here in front of you all today to make this request. And if this is approved, we'll go to the Board of County Commissioners and make the same request.
Okay, thank you, sir. All right, board members, Allison, did you have anything else to add?
I would just kind of like to ask that the fence that's currently there, and I don't know DRC requirements, is that fence going to be put on the residential side to, because there may be some of the neighbors who may have been calling about the parking. I mean, is there a fence over there, or will there be a fence for that residential side?
John Fisher. For the DRC aspects, any residential that would be buffering the parking lot, if it was approved, would have to have at least a minimum of, I think, a 16-foot buffer around it. Includes plants, privacy fence, obviously not in the front where they ain't gain access, but around the surrounding if there are any residential uses. If there's not, then they can continue without those buffer requirements.
John, what was the width you said?
I'm sorry?
The width of the buffer?
Is it 16 or 12? I'd have to look, but I would say it's probably 16. I can't remember.
If the board allows, I can present another.
12-foot type A. He has it right there.
So to the north is the adjoining MDR, and you can see a 12-foot type A. This is a conceptual plan. Of course, it'll be refined as if they're allowed to move forward with the project. But commercial on all of their sides. The residential is what gets that 12-foot. And then any structure setbacks, there won't be structures, but any other setback requirements will be adhered to on the commercially adjoining lots. They're not planning to asphalt this. It'll be a crushed concrete. They'll do landscape additions. They'll make it look nice. It'll have a stormwater retention area, grassing, tree. There's existing trees that they would like to maintain, a magnolia and an oak tree that you can see denoted on there. But that would provide 22, we estimate 22 parking lots and a nice ingress, egress, good signage, and just aesthetically a better looking lot than it currently is, to be honest.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Schneider. Any other questions? All right. Allison, anything else? Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Board members, just please keep in mind that if you're going to make a motion to approve, find alternate findings for the ones that staff shown as non-consistent. Chair will entertain a motion.
Make a motion to approve Z2021-07 from mixed use to MDR. And in the case that criteria B, consistent with the zoning provisions, that the applicant showed their location criteria, and as a result of that, I believe it does meet with the future as opposed to the lot in place. Also with C, it's compatible with surrounding areas. I believe, again, as a result of the location criteria, that this would be more of a transitional property than it would be anything that would compare to spot zoning.
Thank you, sir.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? All right, motion carries unanimously. It still is final decision for the Board of County Commissioners to do that, but good luck with it. All right, thank you. Okay, is there anything else for the rezoning hearing? Hearing none, we will adjourn the rezoning hearing. Staff has asked that we give them about 5 to 7 minutes to set up for the regular planning board meeting, so we're going to take a brief recess here. So let's come back, let's call it 15 to 10. What time is it? 37? Let's go 10 minutes till 10.
To anything? If I didn't come in and what time did she say she's gonna land?
It says wait on organization.
I didn't have an invite, so I just clicked the link.
You know, that's true. Lifetime.
There you go.
Lifetime.
Absolutely.
The one you had, if you sent it.
Okay, make sure everyone's. Marina, can you hear us?
I can. Can you
Okay.
hear me?
Yes, good, very good.
Great.
I think we had a wrong invite sent out, so we were trying to play which one we were using. Sorry about that.
It's all right.
I do need to.
Just Marina. Hold on, I gotta get Rachel logged on because she might have to present the maps. So give me 1 second here.
It's not technically a transfer facility, so it's not.
If you do show participants, you just type our email in.
But it should pop up on here.
So they have 7 days, I put it through the email, the DEP requirements, they have 7 days to dispose of any construction type material that they have there at the site.
Yeah, so DEP had cited down April 2020.
Do what the zone, it should be like ACLI.
ACLI material said the use was not conditional, but transfer.
I don't, it's not technically a transfer.
Well, the definition is broad enough, that's the how,
No.
That's the DEP said it is, right?
Right.
Okay. I was received April 15th, 2020 regarding storage of full waste containers at the site.
You can pick it up and then transfer it to another site, so. In that sense, it would be, I don't.
April 30th, FDP sent them a compliance officer. They can't, yeah, they can't store waste.
Chair, we're all set.
Thank you, everyone. We're going to now call to order the regular planning board meeting for September 7th. Staff members, do we have proof of publication of the meeting?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Chair will entertain a motion to waive the reading of the legal on this hearing.
So moved.
Motion, do we have a second?
Second.
Second, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right, we'll go ahead and run through this real quick. Previously been provided the meeting minutes of the last meeting. Are there any additions, deletions, or corrections? Hearing none, Chair will entertain a motion to accept.
So moved.
Motion.
Second.
Second, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? All right, motion carries. We'll come back to the follow-up and action report when we get into scheduling. We have, you've been previously provided the hearing package for today's date. Chair will entertain a motion to accept that hearing package in the legal advertisement into evidence. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Motion and a second.
Second.
Second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay. And we'll go directly into our action discussion info items. This is 5I, which is OLF 8 workshop. And John, are you okay?
Yes,
And I
sir.
would just remind everybody when we're on these conferences to shut your microphone off in between your speaking so we don't get the feedback.
Okay. Thank you, Chair and Board. John Fisher here. So we are slowly coming to a end here with the OF8. We are looking at the Land Development Code section now. Everything that would go into the Land Development Code and all adopted documents, such as the Transportation Report, the Economic Hybrid Report, the Haas Impact Report, Civil Engineer, all these documents that was done through DBZ subconsultants to help drive this master plan for OF8. To give you kind of a little background where we're at and where we're heading, the reason for this kind of workshop was hoping to get some public input here, but it seems like the public has really died off since we've had the BCC adopted the preliminary hybrid master plan. The public kind of assumed that it was a done deal from my knowledge of discussion with them. They didn't realize there was a future land use map amendment and a comp plan text amendment that we had to do, and we still had to do the design code. So it's just the uneducation part of the public not really being part of it. The other reason we're here today is to give the board find out if there's anything that they don't understand, anything they want to see changes is. Hopefully you got a chance to read through the 1,000 pages of documents that we provided you to get a kind of feel of what this plan looks like and how it will move forward. We want to make sure that the planning board understands if there are any oppositions about anything, that we kind of get that in the air today, because the goal is in mind to bring this as a draft ordinance in October for the planning board. Okay, then we would move forward to the 2 days later and take it to the BCC for its first hearing. We have to have 2 public hearings at the BCC. So it'd be the 2 in October, the first Thursday in October, and I believe it's the 3rd Thursday in October for the second final, hopefully for adoption. Okay. So we want to go through this with you folks. We do have DBZ Marina on Teams with us to help answer any questions, to help facilitate any concerns, questions, anything that the sub-consultants might have done. If you had questions about the reports, how it fits in, these are just other driving factors that help make sure we get the deliverables that we want out of this master plan. Okay. So with that said, what I can do is kind of go through the very first part of what we plan on adopting, such as the regulatory maps, then kind of open it up for kind of discussion. And we can there can be a lot of going back and forth with this document. When you look at one page, it says refer back to another page due to this is a different type of document. This is a form-based code document. This is something that we don't currently have in our land development code. So this is a lot different than what we currently use. Staff is still getting very familiar with it. We're moving along very well with it. The good thing about this code, it has excellent architectural standards, design standards, which we don't have in our code for when someone builds something. So this would only relate to the OF8 master plan area only when we look at these architectural standards and things like that. Okay. All right. So what we're going to go through here, in the OF8 design code, we have the general provisions which have some regulating plan maps. And those regulating plan maps, as you see here on the screen, you see the different zoning categories. We do have all those intents and descriptions in the design code labeled, I think, over on page 6. And as you see on this, you see these little marks here on in the roads. These are called terminant vistas. These little areas actually require more architectural standards when someone designs a building. You can't have a parking lot there. You can't, it's basically, so you pull up to a dead end or you pull up to a certain intersection, you're going to have some type of either monument or a nice architectural building. It's basically kind of the, wow, here's this, point of interest where I'm at. So it gives it more of a good landmark feel. So these are things that will be adopted into the regulating plans. The regulating plans are also, Escambia County's GIS is going to be the sole provider. So when we adopt these, we will have the zoning maps, the road hierarchy maps and classifications, where we which we never had before with like the sector plan and stuff like that. We didn't actually have GIS layers. Everything was kind of drawn in. So this is going to make it a lot easier moving forward. If we have a rezoning or be able to get data, we've gone a long ways from where we were at in the past with, doing plans like this. So the regulating plan, this is when we would adopt. This is what the zoning would look like. And so every 5 years, the option is to move to the next regulating plan. So if we move to regulating plan 2, you actually see this area changed here. Z3 went from Z4 to Z3. So it's kind of hard to go back and forth without having side by side. In our presentations in the past, we had these side by side. It was easier to look at. So now we're actually codifying these to where we can go and how we can move forward. When we say every 5 years, there is language in the design code that gives the BCC the option. We have to go to the Board of County Commissioners to have them vote on whether we want to go to regulating plan 2. So that if we know something's coming in, or they feel like the market just hasn't took off, or the market crashed, or whatever reasons, the BCC decides we're not ready to move to regulating plan 2. We want to keep this area still zone C4 light industrial for another year, 2, 3 years, whatever they decide. They have that option. Okay. So again, it's in the driving hands of the BCC to go to the next regulatory plan. So we can click through these. There's regulating plan 2. There's 3. You can go to 4. There's 4. You can see we start getting, this will be looking at like 2032, if you go about every 5 years. The northwest side had a lot of more residential aspects to it to fit into that area. Okay, you can go on to the next. This is the development area. The development area, you have area 1, 2, 3, and 4. These are basically saying we can't move on to area 2 until area 1 is at least 80% at capacity, or you have such a large plan that comes in, some industrial or whatever it might be, some light industrial, I should say, comes in and they need more than the acreage that is there, then that's something that we can decide on that. There's also a letter of intent. If someone has a letter of intent within 12 months before a area would move, they would be kind of locked in to like, hey, we can still move into another area. We'll be locked into that area before a regulating plan transitions to something or the development area is getting built out. Next, please. These are the thoroughfares classification. These are the roads that we kind of cemented in. These roads don't plan on moving. These are the roads that we need to make this plan work. There's numbers on these roads that are probably really hard to see. You go to the design code, they explain what type of roads they should be like, whether they're have a thoroughfare where they're more of a 4-lane road or 2-lane road. It gives a description of what type of road they should be, if they should have a median with trees up and down the middle, so it gives all those type of things as we go through the process. This is just also the thorough hierarchy, just another layout there. And now we're getting into the design code. That's actually the environmental impact analysis, which kind of helps drive the stormwater aspect, how we want to do the stormwater. One thing that we're shooting for is that we're not having fences around the stormwater ponds, that, this is more of an amenity yet you would walk up to, but it holds the water for the area. So this is kind of the driving summary of, where that came from and how we move forward. No, that's okay. Right now, before we get into the design code, I just wanted to touch base with Marina to see if she wants to give an introduction, to see if there's anything from her that she wants to say. I want to give her the chance to speak before we go really into the design code, and I'll let the planning board figure out how they want to go. Again, this is a workshop, kind of more of an open environment we want to do. We're not voting on anything today. We just want to see if there's anything that you saw as such as permanent uses, such as architectural language. A lot of this stuff, we just want to make sure that the board has a satisfaction, go ahead, let's move forward, or if we want to make changes, we can make it within a week or two before we bring it to October. Okay. Marina, do you want to speak on anything as we move forward, before we move forward, or do you want to, I mean?
No, I think you're doing a great job, John.
Okay.
I'm happy
John-
to answer questions, but it's probably easier for you to be explaining it.
Okay.
John, I would ask you and/or Marina to just give a very brief overview of the difference between form-based and a traditional. I know that form-based is probably more appropriate for this type of master plan development, but since it is kind of a new concept to the county, we haven't used it before, and to the board, maybe just a little more background on what it means, the differences between form-based versus traditional way of doing it. If you could just speak to that for a minute.
Marina, if you
Yeah,
like.
I'm happy to do that. And that's a fair question. So your current code is essentially organized around uses. The uses is the framework that sort of organizes the different zoning categories, whether you're commercial or residential. We have what a form-based code does is essentially says the form of the building takes precedent over the use. The uses are important, but they're secondary to the form. So we care about the way in which, first we control small scale buildings next to small scale, medium next to medium, large next to large. But then we allow uses within those different categories, knowing that certain uses will automatically fall by the wayside by virtue of the fact that they're not appropriate for the building type they're in. So form-based essentially means we really try to control how the form of the building addresses the street. We try to encourage a minimum frontage occupation, meaning if we want to create especially in where the retail is located, we don't want to have bays of parking and then the building set behind. We require that the building be pushed to the front. A form-based code will really put some rigorous standards in terms of how parking can be managed, how it's accessed. If it is on the side of the building, it needs to be properly screened, but it's really encouraged in the back. Otherwise, when you look at the form the drawing that John just pulled up, you'll see a lot of the requirements that you're familiar with already here, but just really highlighted. So, there's lot coverage. The primary frontage occupation, of course, is different. Setbacks are important because it really does control not only the space between the buildings, but the spaces within the buildings themselves and how much land they occupy. And the uses are always very complicated, but we worked with the uses that you currently have in the code, so we wouldn't have to reorganize everything. Staff is familiar with the way the uses are organized. What we did is we coalesce them, we group them, as we do in many times when we go into communities. There doesn't need to be a distinction, for example, between a barbershop and a hairdresser and that kind of stuff. So the uses are aggregated into larger categories, but all the uses if John were to go to the use table, you would see it and you would recognize it. So this is a long-winded way of saying the form of the building matters more than the use of the building. And so that's what's really controlled by virtue of the placement of the building on the lot, the masting of the building on the lot, and in particular, how parking is handled. There are the uses.
And Marina, is it fair to say that in intentionally planned areas that the form-based is used more just because of the walkability and the flow of the community and everything like that?
Well, yes. So there's two things to that. Number one, the community got behind a vision for this area, right? We argued a lot with the Board of Commissioners about uses, which uses should go where. But frankly, the framework for the master plan that was supported. And so in order to code that vision, it's and that sort of understanding of intensity of character, we needed to think about what the streets look like, where the streets are located, as John showed you, and even, the strange zoning designations that are there, because that is coding into place the vision that everybody got behind. So there's a level of predictability in a form-based code that you don't see in a use-based code or in a Euclidean, the typical standard conventional code. This will encourage walkability by virtue of the fact that we really try to pay attention to how the buildings meet the sidewalk and what the space essentially is between the face of the building and the edge of the sidewalk. And we also coordinate the spaces across the street from each other. In other words, the private frontage, so the front yard, is coordinated with the public frontage. So what are the travel lanes, where parking is on-street parking is appropriate, what are the width of the sidewalks, and that sort of stuff. And it's aligned with your own standards, of course. We didn't reinvent the wheel, but we tried to be more specific in terms of street types, the same way we're specific in terms of building types.
Thank you very much for that explanation. John?
One question. So if you can confirm if I'm on the right train of thought here on the regulating plans phases, 4 phases, 5 years apart roughly, with some language in there to give it some leniency. The ideal regulating plan is number 1. Pie in the sky, best outcomes. We plan for regulating plan 1, so we provide for a lot more light industrial. As I work through the 10-year, 15, and 20-year, we encroach on the light industrial with either commercial or commerce or more neighborhood general as the demand is there. So am I thinking that correctly? If in the first 5 years of the development goes as the BCC wishes, that it's, over half light industrial, then you've got your core neighborhood up front and commerce lining the other property.
Correct.
Yes.
Go ahead,
So
Marina.
I do want to address that a little bit, but that is generally correct. It is absolutely correct in the sense that we tried to have it both ways for the commission. And essentially we wanted to tell them, if there is indeed a demand for this much light industrial or commerce space only, first, develop compactly, don't waste the land because it's county-owned property. And if indeed you need to, you outgrow the area 1, then you move into area 2 and then into area 3. But what if the commerce doesn't come? There needs to be a backup plan. And so what the regulating plans say is, if there is no market for the commerce, then let it transition to something else. And that's what the regulating plans do. With the exception, of course, of reserving a certain amount for a town center, fronting 9 Mile Road, essentially, with just a little buffer of commercial along 9 Mile Road, since nobody wants residential along that edge. And then a little bit in the middle that is reserved for a residential development as well. Everything else can technically go to commerce uses.
Mr. Chair.
Just a follow-up question. I guess the opposite scenario, and I have no idea if this would happen or not, but what within the first 5 years, instead of getting to the 5-year mark and they trigger a date to consume light industrial because it hasn't moved yet, what if within the first 5 years commerce explodes and there's no light industrial? Is there something worked in where we could take it early and allow for more development on commerce or neighborhood general that has not been triggered yet?
Well, that's a very good question, but I think the short answer is no, because by virtue of the fact that the Beulah interchange is going to come in, it's going to take a while for the Beulah interchange to come in. The politics of it was such that there needs to really be an emphasis for and time given to Scott Luth and his group and others to try find commercial tenants who would want to come here. And I think, my reading of the BCC, and I could be wrong, is that they don't have the appetite to say, if there's no interest in commerce in the next 3 years, it can all go to something else, because we know there's a market for residential now already. So if we were to suddenly open it up, then it would be gobbled up by residential very, very quickly. And they don't want to see that happen. So there is a priority given to the development of commerce, land reserved exclusively for commerce, in phases.
Thank you.
Mr. Adams?
Yes, John, can you go back to that table of permitted uses? Okay, let's see, nope, that ain't it. Okay, I think it's page 4. You just were on it. There you go. Okay. Now I'm looking at, is this the permitted uses for the whole entire OF8?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, well, I'm talking to John right now. Appreciate it.
Sorry.
What I'm seeing on here is a preschool and kindergarten, and I think the board, this board knows, and I know the Board of County Commission knows, we have submitted a letter to county for 25 acres for a possible K-8 school there on that Site 8. So I was just curious why it does not have permitted use for a school. It's just got preschool.
There was, trying to make sure we didn't miss it, or if it just, so this update that we just received before the planning board hearing, the staff is going through the permanent uses one more time. This is one thing we will make sure that, because we are definitely aware of the K-8
Okay.
type of school.
Yeah.
We'll make sure that is part of the plan.
Yeah.
It might have just, when we retyped these out, that part just got.
I saw you had preschool and daycare and all that, but I think for this board here to know, the reason why we're concerned is we've had 65 subdivisions come in District 1, and you have Ransom and Kingsville to the north, and you have Beulah Middle, Beulah Elementary to the south.
Yeah.
So what we're concerned about is the number of jobs that come on that field. We would have to have a school there if it was a lot of jobs coming in. If it stays vacant, no issues. If a couple thousand jobs come in, then we have an issue, we gotta move quick.
We have educational facilities in the CZ zoning, which if we go to the adopted plan map, it shows in the A.
Oh, I see it there. Okay, thank
So
you.
it is in there. It's just called
Okay.
something a little different.
Got it. Okay, thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir, for pointing that out to us. All right, go ahead, John.
Okay. At this time, I can kind of go through the code a little bit to see if anyone has any questions about the design code itself. Does anyone have any questions about any of the other documents? You know, we can kind of shut that part out, or if something comes up, we can look at that as well. Again, this is a different type of code than what we are used to. You got the table of contents here that kind of breaks everything down. The article of revisions, so here's your classifications of what each zoning is down here at the bottom, what civic, low intensity, general, so you get more of a description of what each one, the intent is, let you all use to look at. I just want to make sure that, you know, the board is on board with this design code, and there's nothing that, you know, we didn't miss, and we make sure we can try to address any concerns and questions at this time. When we were talking about the regulating plan, so this is everything that will be coming in, being adopted as your road hierarchy maps, your regulating plan. Here's what talks about terminated vistas. There is a section in the code that talks more about terminated vistas as we go through. You know, saying it should be, you know, higher architectural standards, designs, and so on. As you can see, here's just basically explaining what each plan is, how they're labeled. And right below there, section B, the timeframe associated with each regulating plan may be modified as determined by the BCC. So if they, you know, it's something that development services will have to keep in mind, you know, about 6 months out before the 5 years is up, that we get with the BCC, set a date to make sure that they want to vote to move to the next regulating plan. Okay. Moving along with the zoning maps, development areas, we kind of already went over. One thing we are doing a little bit different that we have to do for kind of the DRC process, this is the submission requirements. With current land development code, we just ask for basically conceptual designs. We don't ask for architectural standards. We don't ask for lighting. We don't ask for, you know, the material it's got to be made out of or anything like that. We are requiring, when they do a submittal to the county now, that they give us all this up front, because that's the way this plan's only got to work. We have to know kind of where this road's going, what's their intent moving forward. And one of the big things that the Board of County Commissioners really needs to look at, and there's been discussion with them about doing an RFP. Basically, you know, the whole thing, this plan would work great if we have a master planner. If it's piecemealed, it's going to be much harder to do this plan. It's got to take a lot more talking back and forth, because if so-and-so does something, it affects how the next person builds. So if you have a master planner that comes in, a master developer, this can move forward a lot easier. And that's something that would be really good for the residential and the town center area, make that move forward. With all the light industrial commerce area, that's something that's going to have to be worked out as phases either stay alive or die out, depending on every 5 years. That's something that we're going to have to really work forward. And there's still talk about Triumph funding, having a, you know, trying to help induce the light industrial area to grow by the county putting in infrastructure to get to the commerce areas. So there's still a lot of work politically that needs to be done to move forward. And that's, once this is adopted, that's where the hands are going to lie in on the BCC to move forward on how they're going to move forward. Subdivision standards, just more requirements on the length of the streets, feet, something that we're not used to. You know, how they can be built out, the max and min. You got a little different areas. That's not what we're used to. Any rezoning changes. This table down here goes more to if someone wanted to come in and rezone something, we do still allow for rezonings, but we actually have a table, it can only be rezoned to a certain aspect. You don't want a Z6 or a Z5 next to a Z4. You don't want light industrial next to a single family home. So we're trying, you know, there's actually a transitional zoning table that makes this work. Okay. So we've tried to look at every aspect of this. We get into the typical platting standards, road standards here that are fitting with, you know, the one thing about this code provides a lot of green space, parks that are required per so many, you know, linear feet that you build or how many, you know, blocks you build. So all that's entwined, which we currently really don't have in our code. So we're creating a lot of walkable green space areas. So it's a very well designed code. You know, we get to the details of street lighting, you know, how lighting should be handled at this time. I don't want to go into a whole bunch of specifics. I really want to leave it up to the board. I do see we have one public speaker as well. It kind of drives the train sometimes when we have some questions about how we move forward. But again, this is just the difference on a lot of things. One of the things I really wouldn't here to really manipulate is the parking standards or the sign standards. This code has a lot of illustrations in it from our current code, which does not. Our current code does not have really any illustration pictures. This gives a better concept of how things should look by using these type of standards when it comes to the architectural, the signs, and the road designs. So it really helps. This is something we're working out as well, where Muni code, we're going to have to adhere to something different about trying to insert this code because we can't really use this in Word documents. We're looking to require InDesign, which this is made out of, to help us be able to manipulate this and edit as we need moving forward as well. So these are just internal issues that we're working out. Otherwise, which everything seems to be moving forward as it needs to. Marina, I just want to give you another, before we let the public come up, do you want to make any comments about the code or any of the documents? We do have one public speaker.
Thank you, John. I think it's important, just very briefly, I think you gave a good overview. General 1, the general provisions, is important to acknowledge that it describes the intent of the code. And we always tell staff, you know, when you see a proposal, go back and verify it against the intent to make sure it's meeting those standards, because it will really help approve a project. The applicability, of course, it tells you how it's applicable. I think the recognition, though, that there is a possibility for applicants to request variances within a window insofar as it meets the intent, with the understanding that there's always a need for a master plan to change for whatever reason. So we wanted to build in that level of flexibility, but not leave it sort of completely open. The subdivision standards are important because they essentially say within those larger areas how you lay out the streets and the blocks and assign open space. The open space is encouraged to be provided where the master plan has located it, but there's wiggle room there as well. And of course, for the board member who was asking about walkability, the size of a block is the most important determinant of walkability. So we really try to control the block sizes with the depending on the zoning category that you're in. And of course, that's where the street standards are also defined. Article 3, which are site and building standards, that's really where you really get into the form standards. The lot size, the occupation, the setbacks, the height. Height is measured now in stories as opposed to feet, with an understanding that there's a cap, of course, to how tall a story can be. So, for example, in residential, it's 14 feet. If somebody wants to do a 15-foot height, they can, but it counts as 2 stories. There's which will be new to you, frontage requirements. As I was speaking before, how the building meets the street is very important. So we define very minor standards, but still it's important for property owners to select the kind of frontage type they want to put in place so that it's recognizable and understandable, as well as encroachment. So standards for awnings, standards for galleries and arcades, nothing too onerous, but it gives a greater level of predictability. Article 4, of course, are the uses. We've spoken about that. Article 5 is about parking, which not only provides standards for parking, but also parking access, parking location, parking modifications, and standards for bicycle parking as well. Article 6 are sign standards, and those you will see drawings to accompany that. It's the same standards that you have, but instead of it just being numerical, so for example, the height of the sign varies depending on whether it's on a blade sign or on a wall sign. So that's what these standards are intended to convey, and it's conveyed hopefully in an easy to understand way. Then there are landscape standards and guidelines, and of course the standards are required, the guidelines are encouraged. Same with the architectural standards and guidelines. There are general architectural standards that are applicable to all, and then there are some where you'll see a distinction between shall and should. So where it says should, again, it's encouraged, and shall, you'll see, for example, the A streets, which are the streets of the highest pedestrian importance. The standards for the buildings on those streets are of a more rigorous nature. On B streets, they are slightly reduced from that, still requiring, avoiding the sort of egregious mistakes that sometimes we see happening. And then the last article are definitions, the introduction of certain terms that have been introduced that may not be in your code, like frontages, I think. And we've put those in. So that's a very sort of brief description of this code. And it's not, there's not 462 pages to this code. I don't know why it says 942. Or 462, sorry, on the bottom of the page. It's less than 100 pages.
That's because it's part of the entire agenda there.
I figured. Got it. Thank you.
Okay. Board members, questions? All right. You said we had a speaker. Is this gentleman? Okay. I didn't have a request for him. That's why I was asking.
I just saw. Did you want to speak at all today on the OFA matter? I know you've spoken at the BCC on the future land use scale, so I just want to give you the opportunity, sir.
Sir, if you'll please state your name and address for the record.
John Kellis, 8974 Saltgrass Drive. I really did not come here planning to speak. I came here to pay attention to what was being presented, and should it digress from what I had read prior to coming here, to have the opportunity to express an opinion or seek clarification. And so far, I'm okay.
Thank you, sir. Okay. Board members, any additional questions? John, is there anything else you want to add? Okay. So with this being an action item? Are we basically, do we have to make a
Yeah, there's-
motion here to move it forward, or just?
No.
Okay.
The plan is, again, next planning board that would bring this as a ordinance for approval to take to the BCC that following in 2 days after that. So we just want to make sure we can hash out anything now that the board might, bring up if they thought if there's anything that they saw or read about, that we can take care of that or at least address it with them.
And as a courtesy to the school board, I think we should, definitely make sure that it's clear in there that we have the K-8 school designated because of their concerns about that. Board members, anything else that you can see that we need to send back with the staff? Yeah, well, if that's it, then we'll.
Thank you very much, board. Thank you, Marina, for joining in, and I hope you have those explanations.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, Marina. All right, we have opportunity to have public forum. Sir, did you wish to speak? You're the only member of the public here. So, okay. All right, we will hereby close public forum. I don't see Horace anymore. Drew or John, did Horace give any, well, he's on the phone. Anything for director's review?
I can let Rachel give an update of what's on the board for October.
We'll start asking Rachel first, she's.
Drew's on the phone now. I was trying to figure out I can't remember what was going on with the sector. Workshop. Yeah.
Yeah, I just wanted to see if you guys had anything you wanted to give up. We're gonna go over the follow-up and 6-month outlook, but the workshop is coming up. We need everybody to attend if you can.
Yep.
It's on the 21st,
Yes.
and that's gonna be a pretty important one.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. And you've covered it all, so.
Okay. Well, please let Rachel know. I will be here. Just tell you right now, I already have it on my schedule, so unless something dramatic happens, I'll be here. So any of you that might have a conflict, or do we expect to have?
Is that at 8:30?
Yes. Okay. And Mr. Adams, do you know if Patty will be attending that one, or will you be attending it?
I will actually be in my office in a little bit, and I'll get our board coordinator to
Okay.
ensure one of us will be here.
Okay. And just because it's an important meeting, it'd be helpful to find out if Steve is going to be here for the Navy as well, just in case there's anything that comes up on that one. So September 21st at 8:30 a.m.
That'll be on a Tuesday again.
All right. Let's see. Kia, anything from county attorneys?
Nothing from me. Thank you all.
Okay. And I always ask Horace this typically, but has there been any cases that we recommended where the board made an alternate finding, changed, voted differently than we recommended or anything like that?
No, we don't recall any.
Okay.
I think
We just
everything's been-
kind of like to,
There's nothing in the packet that said anything different.
okay. I just always like to ask that just to make sure we're staying on top of if things changed, so. Okay, is there anything in particular on the 6-month outlook that we need to be paying close attention to? Do we know what next month's schedule looks like? Okay, so we have a large scale and small scale. Without going into the details, do we anticipate a lot of controversy on any of those?
The only thing that I will say is that there's a potential for inerarity to come back. Not the same exact thing, it's just more inerarity, and they had a big outturn last time.
Okay,
So that would be the only thing I would personally mention.
okay. Here comes Drew.
We're looking at a large scale and rezoning for additional properties out there that the county does own. Yes, there was a large turnout last time and support, so.
Right, right. So we don't expect it to be controversial,
No,
or
sir.
there just may be some speakers.
Correct.
Okay.
And the small scale and rezoning that y'all did recommend approval is sitting on hold right now, awaiting the private property rights element being fully adopted. And then the BCC will transmit it to Tallahassee.
Okay, all right. Very
And
good.
on the property rights element, we should actually be receiving from DEO tomorrow is their deadline to receive the property elements and the OF8 comprehensive text amendment and large scale. We're supposed to receive all that by tomorrow, so then that's why we would take it to the first BCC in October, because it's such a necessity to have that completed.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
Yeah, and, yeah, let me mention about, I know y'all, I'm sorry, I got fired.
It's too late. Your staff already told us everything,
Okay.
Horace, you know.
Let me tell you this, though. I will be sending you, I don't know if y'all looked at the minutes yet from the sector plan discussion. BCC. You really need to listen. My colleague is excellent. I can't show me, tell nobody. She took verbatim minutes. And what the motion that may have been recorded may not match the intent. So I'll be sending you those minutes because the intent of the BCC action is very clear on what they wanted to do with the sector plan. It's very clear. Sometimes motions don't always portray the intent, but I will be sending you the verbatim minutes of that discussion, along with the rest of the stuff we're going to be sending for the workshop.
Okay, so that would be something that everyone needs to review before the 21st. Make sure if you're going to, talk to your commissioner and make sure you have a good understanding of what their intent and everything is, okay? All right, anything else? All right, our next workshop will be on the 21st, and then the regular planning board meeting on October 5th. If there's nothing else, then we are adjourned.
Chairman,
Yes, I'm
I
sorry.
had a quick comment.
Yes, sir.
It's related to the last, to the rezoning case we did this morning, but their analysis, I liked how they broke out the permitted uses in their table. Table 1 was on page 32. I'll just throw that out there compared to kind of the narrative form, how we do it. They break it down by, either residential, retail sales, retail services. I just thought it was a nice way they had broken that out. It was page 32.
Yeah, we do wish a lot of engineer records or consultants do get a little more descriptive. Sometimes it's just narrative a lot of times.
If you look at it, it'll kind of be clear.
Yeah. We don't have any standard requirements of it's on their basis to, what they want to provide us for support.
I think my page
32 of 56.
32 of 56. Oh, it's,
It was their analysis.
This portion of it.
Pat,
It was table 1, yeah. What page are you on there? There you go.
There it is.
Kia, is that something that,
That's just pretty much copied straight out of the code.
It is,
That's the land development code.
I like the presentation
Yeah.
on how it's presented there.
Yeah, that's just basically put in a table. That's our land development code
Yeah,
right
if you
out.
go to page 8, that's how staff presents it. Go up the other way, page 8. Keep going.
She's in a different folder. She's
Oh, I got you.
She's going to the actual agenda to get it.
so Jay, are you suggesting that we try to see
I
if
liked
there's a
how
way
it was-
of
I liked how it was
consistency?
presented.
Yeah. I mean, is that something that the staff, the planning staff can just kind of say, this is kind of how they'd like to see it, or?
There's a
without
difference there.
giving them
Yes.
the details of it?
Yes, so the planning board, they can direct staff to bring these documents to them in a certain format if that helps the board facilitate the process.
Okay.
So it's a minor point. I just thought I'd bring that up. I like the
Well,
presentation.
let's make sure that Horace, I'm sorry. Were you listening?
Mr. Biscuit, I'm always listening. I don't know if I heard it.
And Drew?
And Drew? So what was the discussion?
Mr. Ingwell had a suggestion about the format of how some of these things are presented. And of course, we know that this comes out of the code, but it's different than how the staff's findings, and your recommendation was to try to make it more consistent with this? Is that?
I like this presentation, the format, the table format, vice the narrative format that
So
we typically see.
this is what Brent Snyder submitted with his application, Horace. It's the LDC, it's just broken down into a table, but it's basically, word for word, residential, this is what's allowed. This is, as you see, it's the LDC, but it's in a table format.
It matches the
John?
proposed language.
If you can create the template for that, I don't have no problem. If it can make it easier, it can flow better.
We would have to have a separate document until we do a modification with Municode, because Municode doesn't like tables, that's the issue.
That's the issue, yes. Yes.
And with OFA, we're looking to have to do something different because of all the illustrations. So we're in the process of trying to do something different. And as I mentioned earlier about trying to get InDesign, which is an Adobe product, which just allows us to do a lot better formatting and stuff. Because when you do something in Word, everything shifts around, everything changes, and it's a pain. So we're trying to see if we can get something budgeted to do something. We've been talking about that for about 2 weeks now.
Okay, something you could look at if you're gonna be revising the format in the future, maybe that's something we could adopt. I appreciate
Make
it.
it flow, make it better, we don't have no problem with that. If we can do it, we definitely look into it, absolutely.
All right,
Yeah,
thank you.
It's kind of good, if you go to the design code for LFA, they just put little Ps, they put everything in a table, and they were wanting to go another format, a little bit different, but we wanted to stick more with what we currently had, but they had something a little bit even more simpler, but we didn't want to get people confused of what's allowed and what's not allowed.
I don't wanna create extra work, I just thought.
It's something we've always discussed all the time about what we can do, it's our software compatibility.
And I want to let y'all know, I want to personally, in front of the board, Mr. John Fisher has been a champion for this project. I know he don't like the kudos, but I got a good staff. He has been a champion for this project. He's been hit up, he's been beat up, but he has been a champion. John, we appreciate you for this project, and once we'll go to the next one. But I want to thank John openly in front of the planning board. Thank you for your hard work.
Absolutely agree. Thank you, John. Very professional. We appreciate it.
And happy birthday to Horace Jones.
Oh, hey. Do we need to sing for you?
I know everybody wants to leave, but I just want to let you know we still got you lunch, even though the meeting didn't last that long. So if you're in the area, you can eat. If you're just gonna leave, you can have a good day.
Okay. All right. Well, if we don't eat it, then the staff gets to eat it, right? All right, everyone, thank you very much. We are adjourned.